All right, today we're diving deep into Matthew 5.
Yes.
The Beatitudes, the salt and light, all that.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's like foundational to Christian thought.
Absolutely.
But we're going to look for those aha moments.
Right.
Even if you've read it 100 times.
Exactly. I mean, what's fascinating about Matthew 5 is that it's right in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's like
yeah.
Jesus is laying out the core values of his kingdom.
Oh, wow.
A whole new way of living.
So, okay, imagine you're there on that hillside listening to Jesus, right?
Yeah.
And he starts talking about blessings. Mm-hmm. But not the kind we, usually think of.
Yeah.
He's like, blessed are the poor in spirit. And blessed are those who mourn. Mm-hmm. What do you make of that?
Well, it's almost like he's turning our world upside down, right?
Yeah.
The things we usually associate with like happiness, wealth, comfort, outward joy.
Yeah.
He's saying those aren't necessarily the keys to true blessedness.
So what is true blessedness?
Yeah, right.
Because I think we all want that in our lives.
Absolutely.
But maybe we're looking in the wrong places.
Yeah.
That's
a great question.
Yeah.
That's a question each of us really has to grapple with.
Yeah.
But Jesus seems to be pointing to something deeper.
Yeah.
A state of being aligned with God's heart.
Oh, wow.
Even when life throws curveballs.
Yeah.
You think about it.
Yeah.
The meek, the merciful.
Yeah.
Those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, the peacemakers.
Yeah.
These aren't the traits the world usually rewards.
No, definitely not.
Right.
You don't exactly see blessed are the meek on a motivational poster.
Right. But the more I think about it, the more I see how those qualities actually lead to a deeper, more lasting kind of happiness,
Yeah.
The world might chase fleeting pleasures.
Right.
But this is about something more substantial.
It is. And it's radical.
Yeah.
Especially when he gets to blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, wait a minute.
Right.
Persecution is a good thing.
Yeah.
But when you think about those who stood up for what was right, even at great cost.
Yeah.
It starts to make sense. Standing firm in your beliefs.
Yeah.
Even when it's unpopular.
Yeah.
That's where true strength lies.
I've always struggled with that one, especially in today's world where everyone's got an opinion.
Right.
It feels like you can't say anything
without offending someone.
Right.
But maybe that's exactly why this teaching is so important.
It is.
It's a call to stand firm in our convictions.
Yeah.
Even when it's hard.
Exactly. It's a reminder that, being a follower of Jesus isn't about blending in or conforming to the world's standards.
Yeah.
It's about being distinct, set apart,
Yeah.
even if that means facing opposition.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got these Beatitudes
Yeah.
that are a blueprint for a whole new way of being.
Right.
But then he throws in these metaphors of salt and light.
Right.
And I've always wondered,
Yeah.
what's the deeper meaning there?
Yeah.
I mean, we use salt and light every day.
We do. Yeah.
But what's the connection to our faith?
Right. Well, remember back then, salt was more than just a seasoning.
Oh yeah.
It was a preservative.
Oh.
Something that kept things from decaying.
Oh wow.
And light.
Yeah.
Well, that's about dispelling darkness, illuminating the past.
So is he saying that we're supposed to be little preservatives?
Right.
Running around keeping the world from going bad?
Uh-huh.
Because that sounds like a tall order.
Well, it's less about preventing every little bit of decay.
Yeah.
And more about being, a positive influence in the world.
Okay.
Think about it this way.
Yeah.
What does salt do to food?
It makes it salty.
It brings out the flavor.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Enhances it.
Yeah.
And light
Yeah.
doesn't just chase away darkness.
Yeah.
It reveals what's hidden.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah.
So as Christians, we're supposed to be bringing out the best in others.
Yeah.
And helping them see things more clearly.
So as Christians, we're supposed to be bringing out the best in others.
Yeah.
And and helping them see things more clearly.
That's a great way to put it.
That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
But then comes the part where he says, do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. Mm-hmm. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them.
Yes.
And I've got to be honest.
Yeah.
That one always trips me up.
It's a tough one.
What does it even mean to fulfill the law? Yeah. Does that mean we can just toss out the Old Testament?
That's a question a lot of people have wrestled with.
Yeah, yeah.
And the answer is definitely not to toss out the Old Testament.
Okay, good.
What Jesus is doing is taking those ancient laws and revealing their true depth and purpose. He's not abolishing them.
Yeah.
But he is expanding and deepening our understanding of them.
Okay, so it's like he's taking the foundation that was already there and building something even more amazing on top of it.
I like that.
But how does he actually do that?
Well, he starts by reinterpreting some of the most, well-known commandments.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's where things get really interesting.
Oh, okay.
Especially when he tackles murder. When you think about it, the commandment, thou shalt not murder, seems pretty straightforward, right?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Don't kill people.
Yeah.
Case closed.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those basic rules we all learn as kids.
Right, exactly.
But Jesus, as he tends to do,
he does.
Takes it to a whole other level.
He does.
He's like, hold on.
Yeah.
It's not just about the act itself.
Yeah.
It's about the heart behind it.
Exactly. He says, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, you shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment.
Oh.
And that's where things get really challenging.
Yeah.
Because who hasn't felt anger towards someone?
Oh, for sure. I can think of plenty of times. Yeah. I've been angry and probably even said some things I regret in the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
But is Jesus really saying that getting angry is as bad as murder?
Yeah.
That seems a bit extreme, doesn't it?
It might seem extreme on the surface, but think about the root of anger. Right. It's often about resentment.
Yeah.
Bitterness, a lack of forgiveness.
Yeah.
And those feelings can fester inside of us, poisoning our relationships and ultimately leading to destructive behavior.
So he's not just talking about a fleeting moment of frustration.
Yeah.
He's talking about a deeper attitude of the heart.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that anger.
Yeah.
Especially when it's unchecked. Can be incredibly destructive. It can lead to broken relationships, hurtful words, even violence.
Right.
Jesus is calling us to go deeper, to examine the root of our anger, and address it before it escalates.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right.
It's like he's saying, don't let anger control you.
Right.
Deal with it in a healthy way.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do that?
Right.
Because let's be real, anger is a natural human emotion.
Absolutely.
It's not like we can just switch it off.
It's definitely not easy. Yeah. And it's a lifelong process. Yeah. But I think it starts with being honest with ourselves about our anger, acknowledging it when it arises. Yeah. And then finding healthy ways to express it. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's, talking it out with someone you trust. Yeah. Journaling. Wow. Finding a physical outlet like exercise.
That's helpful. I know I personally need to work on that whole pausing and taking a deep breath thing before I react.
Yeah.
But then just when you think you've wrapped your head around that whole anger thing, Jesus moves on to adultery.
He does.
And guess what? Yeah. He takes that one even deeper too.
He does, right. He's not just talking about the physical act of adultery, but the lustful thoughts, the objectification of another person. Yeah. He says, you have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart.
Wow.
Right. So basically, He's saying that even if you never physically cheat on your spouse, just thinking about it is wrong.
Yeah.
That's a pretty high standard.
That is a high standard.
And it challenges us to examine our thoughts and motives, to be mindful of how we view and treat others, and to guard our hearts against lustful desires.
And this isn't just about romantic relationships, right?
Right. It applies to how we view anyone, regardless of their gender or our relationship with them.
Yeah.
It's about treating everyone with respect and dignity, not reducing them to objects of our desires.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the inherent worth and value of every person created in the image of God.
Exactly. And it's a constant battle.
Oh, yeah.
Let's be honest. Yeah. We live in a culture that's saturated with sexual imagery, and it's easy to fall into the trap of objectification.
No, I mean, you can't even scroll through social media without being bombarded with images that are like designed to provoke lust.
Yeah.
So how do we navigate that? How do we stay true to this teaching in a world that constantly tempts us to compromise?
It's tough, no doubt. But I think it starts with being intentional about what we allow into our minds and hearts. What are we watching? What are we reading? What are we exposing ourselves to? If we're constantly feeding ourselves a diet of lustful imagery, it's going to be much harder to resist those temptations.
So it's about being mindful of our media consumption, setting boundaries, and maybe even taking breaks from things that we know trigger those thoughts and desires.
Exactly.
But what about when those thoughts pop up anyway? What do we do then?
Well, I think it's about recognizing them for what they are. Temptations that we don't have to give in to. We can choose to reject those thoughts, to redirect our attention, to focus on things that are pure and wholesome.
That makes sense.
Right.
Like we have the power to choose what we dwell on, to cultivate a mental landscape that's more aligned with God's heart.
Exactly. But then, just when you think you're starting to get a handle on all this, Jesus throws in another curveball.
Oh, here we go.
This time about oaths.
Oh, yeah. The oath thing.
Back in Jesus' day, people were constantly swearing oaths to prove they were telling the truth. Yeah. It was like a cultural obsession.
And Jesus is like, enough with all the oaths.
Right.
Just be honest.
Right.
It's so simple.
It is.
Yet so profound.
He says, simply let your yes be yes and your no, no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one.
Wow.
He's calling for a radical honesty.
Yeah.
A life where our words and actions are aligned with our hearts.
So it's not just about avoiding outright lies.
Yeah.
It's about a deeper integrity.
Yeah.
A commitment to truthfulness.
Right.
In all areas of our life.
Exactly. It's about being trustworthy.
Yeah.
Reliable.
Yeah.
Someone whose word can be counted on.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important.
Oh, for sure.
In today's world.
Yeah.
Where it feels like honesty is becoming increasingly rare.
Totally. Think about how much time and energy we waste trying to decipher whether someone is being truthful or not.
Right.
It creates so much unnecessary stress and drama.
Yeah.
But imagine if we all lead by this principle.
Yeah.
If our yes truly meant yes.
Yes.
And our no truly meant no.
It would be revolutionary.
It would.
Right. Yeah. It would build trust, foster genuine connection, and simplify our interactions.
But let's be real.
Yeah.
Living with that kind of integrity is a challenge.
It is.
We're constantly tempted to shade the truth.
Yeah.
To manipulate, to say what we think people want to hear.
Yeah.
Instead of what we really believe.
It is a challenge, no doubt. But it's a challenge worth embracing. Because when we choose to live with integrity, we align ourselves with God's character, who is the ultimate source of truth.
And we create a ripple effect
We do.
You know, like inspiring others to do the same. It's like we become living examples of what's possible when we prioritize honesty and authenticity.
Absolutely. But as inspiring as that is, we can't forget that Jesus doesn't stop there.
Right.
He takes us even further into challenging territory with the concept of an eye for an eye.
That's the one that always makes me squirm a little.
Right. It seems so counterintuitive to everything we've learned about, standing up for ourselves and fighting for what's right.
Yeah.
It's definitely a tough one to swallow.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to remember the context.
Okay.
An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, was actually meant to be a limiting principle in the Old Testament.
Okay.
A way to prevent excessive retaliation and spiraling cycles of revenge.
So it was actually a step forward at the time.
Exactly. Wow. It was about, bringing some level of justice and order to a world that was often chaotic and violent.
Yeah.
But Jesus, as he often does, takes it a step further.
Yeah.
He's not just saying, don't seek excessive revenge.
Yeah.
He's saying, don't seek revenge at all.
Wait, what?
Right.
So we're just supposed to let people walk all over us?
Yeah.
Turn the other cheek and take it?
Yeah.
That seems like a recipe for getting taken advantage of.
It's definitely a radical concept, and it raises a lot of questions. But I think that the key is understanding that Jesus isn't advocating for passivity or weakness.
Yeah.
He's calling for a different kind of strength.
Okay.
A strength that comes from choosing love over hate, forgiveness, over resentment.
So it's not about letting people walk all over you.
Right.
It's about choosing a higher path. A path that breaks the cycle of violence and retaliation.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that seeking revenge ultimately hurts us.
Yeah.
More than it hurts the other person.
Right.
It keeps us trapped in a cycle of anger and bitterness.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right.
But it's still a tough pill to swallow.
It is.
Especially when we've been deeply wronged.
It is, and it's not something we can do on our own. Yeah. We need God's grace to empower us. Yeah. To let go of our anger and resentment. Yeah. To forgive those who have hurt us. Yeah. And to choose a path of love and reconciliation.
As challenging as this teaching is, I think there's also something incredibly liberating about it.
Absolutely.
It frees us from the burden of carrying around all that anger and bitterness.
Absolutely. It allows us to move forward with lightness and grace, even in the face of adversity.
Yeah.
But just as we're starting to process this radical call to non-retaliation, Jesus drops what might be the most challenging teaching of all.
Oh boy.
To love our enemies.
Yeah, that one always blows my mind.
Right.
It seems so utterly impossible. Yeah. Especially in a world that's so divided and polarized.
It is incredibly challenging, no doubt.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to remember that Jesus isn't saying we have to, like our enemies or condone their actions. Yeah. He's calling us to a different kind of love.
Okay.
A love that's rooted in compassion.
Yeah.
Empathy, and a desire for their ultimate good.
So it's not about pretending everything is okay, or ignoring the wrong that's been done.
Right.
It's about choosing to see the humanity in the other person, even when they've hurt us deeply.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that they too are created in the image of God, and that they too are capable of change and redemption.
That's a powerful thought.
It is.
But how do we even begin to cultivate that kind of love?
Right.
Especially when we're feeling hurt, angry, or betrayed.
I think it starts with prayer.
Okay.
Praying for our enemies can be one of the most transformative things we can do.
Wow.
It softens our hearts, shifts our perspective, and allows us to see them through God's eyes.
And maybe it also helps us to see ourselves more clearly too.
Right. Yeah.
To recognize our own need for forgiveness and grace.
Absolutely. We're all broken, flawed human beings in need of God's love. And when we extend that love to others, even our enemies, we participate in the healing and reconciliation that God desires for all of us.
You know, as we've been talking about all these teachings, I've been thinking about how interconnected they all are. It's like they build upon each other.
They do.
Creating a framework for a truly radical and transformative way of life.
I agree. It's not just a random collection of sayings. It's a cohesive vision for how we're meant to live as followers of Jesus.
And it's a vision that challenges us.
It does.
To think differently, to act differently, and to love differently than the world around us.
It is. And I think that's why it's so relevant today. Maybe even more so than ever before. We live in a world that's so focused on self-promotion, competition, and getting ahead. It's easy to lose sight of those deeper values that Jesus talks about in Matthew 5.
You know, as we've been talking about all these teachings, I keep coming back to that idea of being salt and light. It's like a simple concept.
It is.
But it's so powerful.
It is.
You know, it reminds me that our faith isn't just about what we believe.
Right.
It's about how we live.
Exactly. It's about embodying those values that Jesus talks about, not just in our words, but in our actions, our attitudes, our interactions with others.
All right.
It's about being a transformative presence in the world, bringing hope, healing, and reconciliation wherever we go.
But how do we actually do that?
Right.
I mean, it's one thing to talk about these ideas. It's another thing to actually live them out in our daily lives. It can feel so overwhelming. Especially when we look around at all the brokenness and darkness in the world.
Right. Well, I think it starts with small steps. It's about taking those teachings and asking ourselves, what does this look like in my life today? You know, maybe it's choosing to be more mindful of our anger, to speak words of encouragement instead of criticism, to extend grace to someone who has wronged us.
It's about those little choices we make every day, the moments where we have the opportunity to reflect God's love and compassion to the world around us.
Exactly. And as we make those choices, as we allow those teachings to shape our thoughts, words, and actions, we'll find ourselves becoming more and more like the people Jesus describes in the Beatitudes. We'll become agents of peace, beacons of hope, and vessels of God's grace.
You know, I think one of the biggest takeaways for me from this deep dive is that it's okay to struggle.
Absolutely.
It's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to mess up and fall short.
Absolutely. None of us are perfect. You know, we're all on a journey, a lifelong process of becoming more and more like Christ. And the beauty of it is God meets us right where we are in our imperfections and our brokenness, and he offers us his grace and forgiveness.
That's so encouraging because sometimes it feels like we have to have it all figured out. Like we have to be like perfect examples of Christianity in order to make a difference in the world. But that's not what Jesus is saying here.
He's not looking for perfection. He's looking for hearts that are open to his transformation, lives that are surrendered to his will, and hands that are willing to be used for his purposes.
And I think that's something each of us can offer no matter where we are on our faith journey. You know?
It's about taking those small steps, trusting in God's grace, and allowing him to work through us to bring light and hope to the world around us.
I love that. It's not about being perfect. It's about being faithful. It's about showing up each day and saying, God, use me. Here I am. Send me. You know, as we wrap up this deep dive, I can't help but feel a sense of like awe and wonder at the depth and richness of these teachings.
For sure.
It's like we've only scratched the surface and there's so much more to explore and unpack.
There is, and that's the beauty of Scripture, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
It's a living, breathing text that continues to speak to us in new and profound ways, no matter how many times we read it.
And I think that's the invitation for all of us as we go from this conversation to keep digging deeper, to keep wrestling with these teachings and to allow them to like shape our lives in meaningful and transformative ways.
To allow the words of Jesus to become more than just like words on a page, but a living reality that shapes our thoughts, our actions, and ultimately our very being.
This has been an incredible journey.
It has.
And I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive in Matthew 5. I hope you've been as challenged, inspired as I have.
It's been a pleasure exploring these profound teachings with you, and I hope our listeners will continue to reflect on them, and discover the transformative power they hold for their own lives.
Remember, it's not about perfection.
Right.
It's about faithfulness.
Faithfulness.
It's about taking those small steps. Trusting in God's grace. And allowing Him to like work through us to bring His kingdom to earth.
So go out there and be salt and light, my friends.
Salt and light.
Be beacons of hope in a world that desperately needs it. And may the words of Jesus like continue to resonate in your hearts and guide your steps as you journey forward.